Dear colleagues, to address the question of relationships between bell beakers and regional identities, Mediterranean France is in an interesting region. This region is defined as the southeastern quarter of France, along the Mediterranean coast, with its main basins between the Alps and the Pyrenees, for an area of more than 110,000 square kilometers. This zone is in contact with the Iberian Peninsula in the west and the Italian Peninsula in the east, and is located at the confluence of two great diffusion corridors, the Aude and Garonne valleys on one side and the Rhône Valley on the other. The first allows contacts with the Atlantic cultural sphere, while the second accesses the interior of the European continent. In this region, research is both old and still intense. On this map, more than 630 sites have yielded bell beakers objects, and a few should undoubtedly be added today. Beaker ceramics correspond to several distinct styles, recognized and described for a long time and allowing three chronological phases to be distinguished. The ceramic typology associated with other objects and contexts has a chronological value in this region. This periodization is based both on few known stratigraphies, on the dating and distribution of their styles, as well as the associations of objects. For the first phase, for which I propose to reserve the term phenomenon, it is still not possible to distinguish an early phase which would be reserved for maritime or corded style vases. And very often, ceramics of these styles are associated with vases of dotted geometric decoration. One thing is certain, the first phase is clearly datable to the late Neolithic, or Chalcolithic, or Neolithic as you wish. Late Neolithic, final Neolithic, is the term most used in Mediterranean France. By its dating and its strict association with other cultures from the end of the regional Neolithic. And it is the same for the middle phase of bell beakers, while the last one, with barbed wire, barbelé, belongs to the early Bronze Age due to its cultural affinities, the presence of this alloy, and its dating. In my opinion, you know, there's three phases in this region. Are also of different natures and can be understood in the same way or all at once. Let us begin by considering the relationship between bell beakers and indigenous regional identities, which means, firstly, addressing the early stage of the bell beakers' presence in this region. What I learned during my excavations and my research is that the bell beaker does not appear in a region empty of humans. After the disappearance of local cultures at the end of the Neolithic, but on the contrary, in contact with them in most cases. And I said in most cases because exceptions were distinguished by certain researchers, requiring several micro-regions to be distinguished. First of all, in western Languedoc, to the west of the Hérault Valley. Researchers have often noted that the bell beakers was present either in collective burials, in dolmens, or cave, where it remains very difficult to establish chronology. Either in the upper filings of ditches or of already ruined sites belonging to the late Neolithic culture of Veraza. This is perhaps the case at Moural-Milgrand in Trèbes, in Aude, here, or at Puéchaud in Poyan, in Hérault, on the right bank of the river. These observations were used by certain researchers to date the bell beaker strictly after the disappearance of regional cultures from the late Neolithic. But the reoccupation of the sites probably does not prove that the bell beaker appeared after the disappearance of regional cultures in an empty world. And today, researchers in this sector, such as Jean Guilaine or Muriel Gandelin, recognize the strict synchrony between the early phases of the bell beakers and the middle and recent Verasien. The final phase of the Verasien still extending in synchrony with the middle beakers of Pyrenean group. In the same geographical area, the site of Chemin du Pen in Alignan-du-Vent, a domestic site of the local group of Coulobre, presents an early bell beaker burial with a fine beaker decorated with comben cord, disturbed and whose relationships with the pit of the Coulobre group are not clear. Bad excavation. But keep in mind the presence of vases with a low carinate in the Coulobre group associated with segmented vases, fluting, printed decoration, etc. We pass into eastern Languedoc on the other side of the Hérault River. On the recently excavated site of Montredon in Saint-Pons-de-Mauchien, an occupation of the Coulobre group, once again, with some early bell beakers, cherts, fine beaker decorated with comben cord, not the presence of low carinate pottery there again. Les choses là. Ah ben. A late beaker occupation, ceramics with barbed decoration, is also present on the site, but later disrupts the installations from the end of the Neolithic. It is the same thing. At the Puech-Badieu site in Metz, near the Montredon, where a complete corded style bell beaker was attributed to the occupation of the Coulobre group of the site. Further east, in the Gard, the Vigneault site in Langlade revealed an occupation of the Fontbuis group, marked by stone architecture, houses, enclosure, etc. The floors of the Fontbuis houses show the presence of one or two early bell beaker vases, fine beaker decorated with comben cord. The context is therefore the final Neolithic Fontbuis, ceramics of segmented shapes, fluting, various impression, etc. Here again, a later bell beaker occupation, but here from the middle phase, the regional beakers, the Rhône-Provence group, is identified, but on the ruins of the Fombuis houses, after the destruction of the Fombuis houses. On the other side of the Rhône Valley, again, with Escanin 2 in Les Baux-de-Provence, near of Arles, close to the Rhône Valley. Always early bakers with comb and cord decoration. In Haute-Provence, the site of Lafare in Forcalquier, which I have already had the opportunity to present to the community, presents a bell beaker burial with an early beaker with mixed decoration, strictly associated with ceramic production from the local group Rhônouvez of the late Neolithic, also related to the Fombuis group, with segmented shapes, fluting, low-keeled vases, etc. And still further east, we should mention the Castellar shelter in Pendimoun, near the Italian border, where early bell beaker ceramics are associated with ceramics with metapole decoration, close to the Italian style, but at the same time revealing a potential connection with the group of Fombuis in a still little known area. In the same region of the southeast, on the left bank of the Rhône, it's also necessary to point out the existence of larger assemblages of bell beakers from early phases, combining potteries with maritime and mixed decorations with ceramics with geometric dotted decorations. This is the case at Fortin-du-Sault in the Bouches-du-Rhône, where the bell beaker vases are strictly associated with ceramics from the Fombuis group, with even a few curiosities, such as this vase with a very bell beaker S profile, S shape, bearing a very Fombuis fluted decoration. Where is it? Back here. It's the same at Les Calades in Orgon, in Bouches-du-Rhône again, a site initially published as pure early bell beakers. It's not, which in reality presents numerous Fombuis type vases. Conclusion 1. There's few sites show there are no purely bell beaker sites or burials in Mediterranean France for the early phase, maritime, corded, mixed, dotted geometric styles. The bell beaker does not appear after the disappearance of cultures of the late Neolithic in this region. The early phase of the bell beaker is synchronous with an undoubtedly advanced phase of the Fombuis group and a fairly homogeneous cultural atmosphere throughout Mediterranean France, an atmosphere of low carinate vases like the copoche du Portugal. That the first bell beakers most often presents itself as a package of a few specific objects within assemblages relating to local cultures of the late Neolithic, even if there are quickly larger bell beaker assemblages, but still associated with indigenous groups, always. Regional indigenous identities do not disappear initially, probably until around 2300 BCE, not before. Let us now come to the middle phase of the bell beakers and the question of the beaker's identity. This is the moment when new bell beakers assemblages develop, presenting new decoration and on new morphologies. Domestic ceramic, a common ceramic specific to the bell beaker, and a regionalization with distinct decorated ceramic groups in Mediterranean France. We will come back to this. Here with Rhône-Provence group, or with the Pyrenean group. First of all, obviously, local cultures do not disappear following the appearance of these new groups. A certain number of sites testify the presence of objects from local late Neolithic on middle bell beaker sites and the presence of middle bell beaker objects on local late Neolithic sites, and the existence of mixed objects, once again, such as bell beaker goblets to the Rhône-Provence group, decorated with flutings at the Chauve-souris Cave in Donzère in the Drôme, or at Mas de Vignolles 4 in Nîmes in the Gard. I had nevertheless imagined that this phase is also an important moment of acculturation of the cultures of the end of the Neolithic, because the new middle bell beaker assemblages show certain features of local cultures in the lithic industry in particular. And it seems that the local groups of the late Neolithic disappeared before the beginning of the early Bronze Age, locally around 2150, 2100 BCE, because they did not participate in the genesis of the new groups. Only middle bell beaker assemblages provide a real link between the end of the Neolithic and the beginning of the Bronze Age. The bell beaker would thus make the regional identities of the end of the Neolithic disappear, but probably within a few centuries rather than a few years, slowly. Furthermore, there are several bell beaker identities that we see appearing through material culture, in particular decorated ceramics. They undoubtedly bear witness to unique trajectories and partly linked to previous local identities, while still sharing a certain number of common features, such as that concerns domestic common ceramic, which is widely shared in groups which use fine or decorated ceramics of different styles. This is why I proposed, concerning this question of identities, to recognize different things at various scales. Bell beaker groups marked by their decorated ceramics of the order of few departments or regions. Bell beaker cultures marked by their their common ceramics, of the order of one or a few current countries, and encompassing a few decorative stylistic groups. The whole being united in a large bell-beaker civilization composed of undoubtedly different peoples, with sometimes ancient traditions, different traditions, but participating in a common network and sharing a certain number of ideals and practices, values, on a large scale. Conclusion 2. Over time, the bell-beaker ends up largely erasing previous regional late Neolithic identities, but not immediately and not all the time. And at the same time, new forms of specifically bell-beaker identities are diverse at various scales. This identity of middle bell-beaker is not a mixed identity. It contains very few local traditional elements, and the changes are not only limited to a ceramic style, but undoubtedly to practice and values. Finally, if I have left aside humans in their biological sense, adopting here a purely archaeological point of view of the identity of the pottery, I don't, however, deny or reject the results of genetic, isotopic, and other analysis. In my opinion, the movement of people, groups, or even populations are absolutely necessary in my region of study to explain certain technical transfers, certain changes. This without considering a population replacement that is neither brutal or total. For reasons that escape me, the supposed directions of movement do not fit with some of the observed archaeological data in Western Europe. I agree with the idea that there is a close relationship between corded ware and bell beakers. The cord decoration probably come from corded ware, somewhere to the east or northeast, but the maritime style is probably always in west. Finally, regarding regional identity, I think I have shown that there are several over time, but also in geographical space at various scales. We could have illustrated the absence of change of identity with a very strange case of Corsica, where barely 10 fragments of bell beaker ceramics are known, compared to the thousands of vases found in Sardinia. In Corsica, the strictly totalitarian identity seems to continue until the end of the third millennium, when it will end up being replaced by the early bronze culture of Bonanaro, coming from Sardinia this time. Ultimately, I do not believe that the bell beaker phenomenon is limited to a change of in funerary practices or ceramic style. These transformations are profound, enough to bring extravagant numbers of peoples together under a form of common identity. In my opinion, the progress in the knowledge are sure, but nothing has been resolved yet. And I thank you for your attention.